And the record labels, while they made these stars and while they gave them a lot of fame and a lot of notoriety, these stars still had to give up a lot in order to do the thing.
You go sit in the movie theaters and like the commercials in the movies. There is commercials where like someone would like run by and like steal a lady's purse and like run off. And then it's like, so you wouldn't steal someone's purse. So why are you stealing music? Or why are you stealing movies? And it was like a bunch of anti-piracy ads for a long time. You could now go viral without a record label. They're not interested in you if you don't have a fan base.
Right. It is not a crime for them to no longer give you money if you're not winning.
You should work to get yourself to a point where you get to make the decision whether you're going to be signed or not, but it's your decision. It's not determined because some record label randomly heard about you and by chance comes and talks to you. I think that's what I would want our listeners to most know. You do the work to get there.
Right.
And then you can decide. If you don't do the work, you'll never get to decide.
The music industry doesn't need more creativity. It needs more people of integrity and people that are going to do what they say they're going to do and actually follow through.
Yeah.
Not like la-di-da-di-da, creative.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, no, you have to know how to like plan, follow a plan, and execute that plan.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you guys so much for tuning in to our podcast. If you find any of the information on here valuable to you as a songwriter or a music artist, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like this video. We want to help more people get the information that you're receiving and benefiting from. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Hey, David.
Hey, KMO.
Welcome to the Project Songbird podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For the first time ever.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Today, we are talking about record labels
Yes.
versus independent music artists.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not artists should choose to remain independent or pursue being signed to a label, and the advantages and disadvantages to both. And I wanted to start with the history of record labels and why they are deemed so glamorous, and why were at one point deemed the most glamorous thing.
The gold standard.
They were the gold standard, and how we've gotten to where we've gotten to today.
Mm-hmm.
So in the early 1900s, record labels were the gatekeepers to music. There was no way you were going to be able to show your music on a public platform without a record label. It was impossible to do.
Why? Why was it impossible?
Because they had access to all the studios, all things distribution, all the industry network connections, and technologically, we didn't have all that we have today as a normal independent consumer, like these non-expensive microphones and non-expensive like software. Software didn't even exist back then.
It was so expensive.
Yeah,
you needed a lot of money up front.
Yes.
Yep.
And record labels were the only ones with that money. It was unfathomable for somebody to be able to do that by themselves. Then fast forwarding to the mid-1950s to like the 1980s.
Well, hold up. Sorry.
You go ahead.
It was impossible to make it. Also, it was impossible to distribute it.
Yeah.
Because like how you couldn't just put it up on YouTube or the internet. Like you had to have connections with labels.
Yeah.
Or you had to do large scale tours. Like the only way to get it out there cost a lot of money.
For sure.
Or then to get your CD in a store.
For sure.
Like as we start progressing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyways.
Because the only real forms of media back then were like radio and then like, again, public.
We started
like,
getting cassettes, records, CDs.
Which we'll get into in a second.
Physical copies that you would spend a lot of money to make a lot of them.
For sure.
And then to get them in stores to distribute.
But even forgetting the innovations that we've come up with, even a public platform of like performing, even today, like it's become a lot more of the Wild West with like being able to perform in coffee shops and like bars and all that stuff, where back then it was like, really, if you wanted to get seen, you had to have big connections. Like if you wanted to perform in front of a viable audience. And so now fast forwarding to the mid 1900s, 1950s, like the 1980s, and record labels are now literally like making stars. So this is where you have Elvis and Michael Jackson and the Beatles and Stevie Wonder and whoever else that you can possibly think of. We know of them because of record labels. Now, we don't know that oftentimes, famous as they were and as glamorous as their lives were, they did have to give up like a lot, if not all of the rights to their music. So it was a sacrifice. And the record labels, while they made these stars and while they gave them a lot of fame and a lot of notoriety, these stars still had to give up a lot in order to do the thing. And so that was tough. Record labels had the advantage for sure still. And now, do you have anything to say about that era before I move on?
I think they had the advantage because they deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's weird to say, but like they had all the pieces that you needed.
For sure.
So like if you had the pieces, then you'd have the power. But since you don't have the pieces, they have the power. So it wasn't necessarily like an evil thing. It was just like the way it was done.
Yeah. And it didn't matter how talented Michael Jackson's one of the most talented artists that has ever lived. It didn't matter how talented they were. The record label still had control. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of talented people that didn't get a shot.
For sure.
Because if the record label just didn't like their music or like them for some reason, again, they held all the control.
Yeah.
There was no like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yes. 1000%. No, there was still no way to do that. The record labels still very much had control in this era. And then fast forward to the early 2000s, and with technological advancements, historically with record labels, things started to change. And with the inventions of things like CDs and the internet, the record labels started to lose control because we, not only CDs or the internet, but like iPods, which we talked about off camera, and other things alike, the way that music and other forms of media were consumed became a lot more accessible and a lot more affordable, and honestly way out of the record label's hands and control, to the point where, and this is called the Napster era, to the point where like a bunch of websites were releasing music for free, and it was illegal to do. Yeah. But you lived through that era, so I'd love to hear your perspective.
So I didn't use Napster.
Okay. Was it LimeWire?
LimeWire. Okay. So in the concept of LimeWire, and what's so hard is it was outpacing legal precedent.
Yes.
Technology all of a sudden came out, and like we didn't know how to protect artists on the back end. That was the tricky thing. So I don't think it was like everyone wasn't just trying to rip off artists. Right. There's just things were coming out. We're like, oh, this is cool that we can do this now. Yes. So with LimeWire, I could take like a CD. So I could take like a Backstreet Boys CD. Yeah. Or like a Linkin Park CD, anything back then. And I could put it in my computer, and I could then upload it to LimeWire. And then anybody searching for the artist could find that I had uploaded it and just download it. Yes. So in one sense, you're just like, oh, all you're doing is you're taking your information and you're putting it on the internet, and then other people are just downloading it. Yeah. But what was really tricky is like when you buy that CD, what are you buying the rights for? You're buying the rights for yourself to listen to it. Yes. But then it gets really tricky because it's like, well, what if I show a friend? What if I let a friend borrow it? Right. Could I resell that CD to someone? So it's just very, very, very tricky. The funny thing about LimeWire, KMO, is that everybody knew that if you did this, after a while, like you could get really bad viruses on your computer. Yes. I heard and everyone still did it. It was like, I don't care that my computer doesn't work before, because I have every song I could ever listen to. And it was like, it was just wild to think you could download anything. And then some of the quality of them was so bad. Yeah. Because people would like early days of YouTube, like rip things off YouTube or other places, but like it would downgrade the MP3 file so much that it like sounded terrible, but no one cared. No one cared. Which is a big reason why when Steve Jobs came out with the iPod, he was pushing for it as like, I want to try to solve the copyright thing. So I want to have people buy music from me so that the artists still get paid. And I want to control the quality. Yeah. And so that's why for him, the iPod was like, it's only going to work if you're using it through iTunes, because that's the only way I can keep people from just ripping things and putting them on there. Yeah. And then ripping off artists and ripping off quality. So he was I was in the forefront of trying to figure out how do we maintain quality standards and maintain artist protection. Yeah. And start talking about file sharing as stealing, which was like very new language. You don't remember this either, but even like early on, like you go sit in the movie theaters and like the commercials in the movies, there was commercials where like someone would like run by and like steal a lady's purse and like run off. And it was like, you wouldn't steal someone's purse. So why are you stealing music, or why are you stealing movies? And it was like a bunch of anti-piracy. That's wild. Ads for a long time. No, I did not live through that era at all. Trying to solve this. I was such a kid. Yeah. And then, Spotify comes out and they start to like, well, what if we add ads to it? And so it gets even more complicated and interesting. But yeah, you could now go viral without a record label. Okay. Justin Bieber could post YouTube videos of himself doing musical things, build up a fan base, and now he has access to distribute his music without a label. Yeah. And not only now does he have access to a fan base, again, as technology is increasing, he could use his own technological tools
For sure.
to make his music or hire people at a significantly lower rate than what record labels traditionally charged to make his music. Because again, like that's even computers were considered only for professionals.
Right.
And then again, Steve Jobs comes around. He's like, I want to make consumer based products where they can be the professional.
Yeah.
You could make your own home movies. That was like, I could make my own movie.
Right.
There's no way I can make my own movie. And it's like, here's tools to make little transitions and add music underneath it. And so putting power in the hands of people, which there was like a whole underground, like against anti-Big Brother movement in that idea.
Sure.
So I think the record label's on the back end of that. And a lot of companies were very slow to adapt.
Yeah.
Again, this is why the companies that were quick to adapt, like Apple, did really well during this time. There was a lot of companies that were really slow to jump on this train and they just doubled down and like print more CDs.
Sure.
Like, let's keep doing deals this way.
Yeah.
And other companies are like, wait a minute, things are shifting. We need to shift along with them if we want to be profitable.
And so they did.
Yeah.
That's
So that was the
really
Napster era. Did you have an era after that?
Yes.
Our
current era, which is the one I have most consumed music in.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I remember, I don't even know what to call this era. The internet virality era, I think, is what a lot of people
streaming
would call it.
era?
Yeah, streaming era. Dude, I remember when Spotify first became a thing. It's wild because like it's really been out for like almost 15 years.
Yep.
But it feels like a new thing. But it's like it's been a thing for a while now.
Yep.
I was in middle school, 7th or 8th grade, and I remember using Spotify for the first time. And I was like, I can listen to anything I want for free.
Yeah.
Without, or I guess for free with their plan.
Did you use the free version of Spotify?
For a long time.
Yeah. Do you remember like you could only listen to one song and then the next song you didn't have control over?
Yeah, no.
And like you didn't get control again for like a couple of listens?
Yes.
Same with Pandora.
And you only had so many skips.
Yes.
And then you had all these ads. Dude, I remember them all.
But even that was like
revolutionary.
Yeah, it was still better. Again, I think the streaming age, people, depending on like how you feel about it, some people are so upset about it.
Right.
Some people think it's amazing. For the consumer, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
I mean, like, again, as a consumer of music, the fact that I can listen to so many different things, I can explore so many different things, I can share things with my friends, they can share things with me. This was all like unheard of when I was growing up as a kid, because like you had to go out and spend $10 on a CD. And then the only way to actually like listen to it was to have a CD player around.
Right.
Which, you know, unless you brought, which we did, our little CD players and our headphones. It's just so different now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I could just pull up my phone and be like, listen to this song and hit play. Like it's a golden era for consumers.
For sure. I think the key phrase is on demand. I can listen to anything I want on demand without having to wait or search.
Yep.
So that's the era I've known most, because before that I was too young to really be consuming music on my own. And it's wild. And so in this era, obviously you have technological advances with how consumers consume music, but you also have technological advances with how artists and songwriters make music. And so like you said, even 20 years ago, with the advancement of computers and the innovations of like cheaper microphones, it was still gatekept a little bit, like with pricing and with the market and how they were being sold. And even like software like Pro Tools 20 years ago was really something only for industry professionals. Now any Joe Schmo can buy or download Pro Tools or something like it.
You also had to have such an expensive computer back then to run it. Now our more inexpensive computers can run it. I even think like learning, like if you wanted to learn, if you were like on the forefront of Pro Tools and you wanted to learn it, there's only one place to go to learn. You had to go find a large studio that used it.
For sure.
Now you could just YouTube, how do I do this in Pro Tools?
Yeah.
And there's thousands of videos. I feel like the online education portion of this has really opened up the door too.
Yeah. And what's wild about even the computer part is our $500 computers are better than what was $3,000 computers back then.
Yeah.
That boggles my mind.
Yep.
And so all of this to say, we have gotten to this point now in 2025 where, and there's a lot of details we skipped. There's a lot we could touch on throughout this history. But the point is, we've gotten to this point where we can, as independent artists or songwriters or whatever, can do anything. And we want to talk about the disadvantages and the advantages of that and the relevance of record labels today, why they're still relevant or why they may not be. why you should remain independent or why you should maybe pursue a record label and what the difference is between the two and the dynamics of both. So
when I was in college,
Mhm.
getting a record deal was still like the gold standard.
Okay.
Like if you told someone like
Which you were in college like
2010 to 2014.
30 years ago.
Yeah, 30 years ago. Get out of here. But even then, we were still like entering into the streaming era. It was still like that would be like everyone's secret goal.
Sure.
I want to get a record deal. If you got a record deal, you were somebody.
Mhm.
Like you were telling everybody about it. Do you think that's still the way today? Like, do you think it's still the gold standard?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I think a lot of my peers that like
Yeah.
I think a lot of my peers that might even have a chance of being signed to a record label, they would be cautious.
Yeah.
They wouldn't discount it.
What is the standard then of like we've made it?
I think the standard of we made it is, can I live sufficiently off of my music?
Yeah.
I think that's the goal for a lot of
You
people.
think it's that black and white? Because even a record label back then, you might not have even been able to live off of it, but it's still the gold standard of like we've made it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, I think if somebody considered the prospect of being able to work with a record label and then knowing that they might not still be able to live off of it, I don't think they would still pursue that, if that makes sense, at the expense of their living.
Yeah. I'm like, is it an amount of streams? Is it like when you hit 1 million streams? Is it like an amount of monthly listeners? Is it hitting on a playlist? Like,
I think the goal is like fandom. I think
Yeah.
it's like, how much of an audience do you have that you would be able to do this thing, like tour, and maybe it's touring. I don't know. But then again, I'm like, I know some artists that never want to tour and just want to have a bunch of streams.
yeah.
So it really, in that sense, even has become the Wild West, where it's like a lot of artists have different goals, where you're right. Like years ago, the goal was just to be signed to a record label, and now it's changed quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, there's like whole songs written in the 90s about selling out to record labels.
Yeah.
And like the good and the bad of it. It's just so interesting. I don't know. I feel like in my mind, I always think like Grammys are like one of like, maybe not the gold standard, but like the actual absolute platinum standard of like something good. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So let's talk about the differences between independent record label and hit on different things. Number one, ownership.
Yep.
As an independent person, you do have complete ownership of your music. Whereas a record label, there is some level of ownership that they have when they invest in you.
Mm-hmm.
And people hear that and they think that's inherently bad. And it's like, no, not necessarily. When you consider the fact that they are investing money in you, they should get some ownership. They're practically placing a bet on you. And they deserve to get something out of that in that sense. And so you have to decide in negotiations and in these conversations how much you're willing to give up. But there's ownership. We'll come back to that. There is creative control. Mm-hmm. So when you invite a larger company or organization around you, and you have other voices, to some degree, you are inviting them in on the creative process. And that may be for better or for worse, but you no longer have complete creative control, which again makes sense when you introduce other people's money into the conversation.
Yeah. If I'm investing in you, I want to say in how the product turns out because I want to make sure the product wins.
Yeah.
You might think it's going to win a different way and not like the way that I think it's going to win, but that's just the risk. That's what you take on when I'm giving you money. For
sure. And both of these things that I even just mentioned, ownership and creative control, and then the next things I'll mention, they have varying degrees among all record labels. So we're not going to say definitively how record labels function because a lot of them function differently.
Every deal is different.
Every deal is so different.
Even within a record label, they might give different deals to different artists.
And I personally have friends that have experienced a whole range of relational tensions in these areas where I know friends that are signed to record labels and they do still have complete creative control while others lose it a lot. And again, varying degree of ownership. Like some have more ownership than others. So it's not one size fits all. There's obviously the funding conversation, where you obviously are to a record label, you have varying degrees of funding from them. And conversely, as an independent artist, there's varying degrees of funding. And then distribution and timelines. that can vary between being an independent artist and being with a record label. And then there's marketing, this piece where you have a team around you formed with a record label where people's whole jobs are designated to think through how you can get your music out there in front of eyes. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of differences between the two. So let's talk about the disadvantages and the advantages of both.
Yep.
Starting with a record label. What do you think the advantages and disadvantages are to being on a record label?
Well, I think in each of those categories, there's an advantage and disadvantage. Mm-hmm. So like if we're talking ownership, like it's nice to have someone in your corner doing this with you.
Yeah.
You don't bear all of it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So having shared ownership shares responsibility.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if you don't like what's going on, it just causes a rub, or you have to share in the profits of that. It's like, again, if I start a business and I have to have someone come and invest in my business, now when my business takes off, that person is going to get a large chunk of that as well.
For sure.
If my business never takes off, that's on that person for making a bad investment.
For sure.
So I don't know. It's just tricky.
But it's still on you to pay them back.
It's still on you to pay them back. Yeah.
If they've invested in you. Unfortunately, that's the reality of business.
Unless you declare bankruptcy and then
I declare
no one gets
bankruptcy.
Yeah. Yeah. If I were thinking the advantages, there are some things that you can't do still without large sums of money. Mm-hmm. Touring being one of those on a large scale. Mm-hmm. Touring costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money that has to be fronted to make that happen.
For sure.
You could weigh the advantages and disadvantages. We both love John Bellion. He did a very interesting rant on this on George Danko's podcast, where he basically outlined how bad of a deal he had with his touring.
Yeah. Which is wild.
Yeah. If you want more information on that, just go watch that, because we don't have enough time to go through it. But he couldn't have done those tours on his own at that time.
No.
With the money that he had. It's still, I think working with a record label still does give you access to some unique things. Like you are getting access to some industry professionals that if you didn't sign with this record label, you would have to pay out of your pocket and try to make those connections.
Yeah.
And I do like the team aspect. I think we'll talk about this. Well, we'll talk about it now. Like if you're an independent artist, it's still on you to have a team around you. Mm-hmm. The difference is though, like you have to make that happen. And a lot of artists, especially like if you've been doing this just by yourself for a long time, it might be really hard to like work with others and to even have that drive to go invite other people into working with you.
Totally.
Whereas when you work with a record label, like it's not even a choice,
right?
Like you have to work with other people now. So I think that is an advantage for some. Like if you just can't build a team around yourself, like that might be a good way to get a team around yourself.
I guess the risk with that is because you don't have a choice, you don't even have a choice over who you work with.
Yeah, you're trusting this person that you're going into business with, that they're going to put the right marketing person with you.
And if you don't,
the right A&R person with you,
and if you don't like them,
tough.
You're SOL.
Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah. So, yeah. Whereas if you form a team around you as an independent artist, you do get to choose.
Yeah.
You have an option, and you are the boss.
Yeah.
Of this business.
Yeah. So I think those would be like some positives. You might not have to do as much bookkeeping. You might not have to do as much of that kind of work. But also like you're going to be expected to be on their timeline and to like get things done. So I don't know. There is definitely still some advantages. I bet the higher up you go, the more those advantages are actually felt. I think it's like a lot of industries, the top 0.5%, 0.1% maybe do really well. Mm-hmm. And then there's like a middle ground of like, it's really difficult to make a living. And then there's like a level that's like, you can't make a living.
For sure.
Like in a lot of pro sports, like we don't think about this with basketball and football, because like if you're sitting on the bench, you're making a lot of money.
Right.
But like in tennis, if you're not in like the top 1 to 200 players, you're not making a great living.
Yeah.
You're like scraping by, because paying for travel and tournament fees takes up all of the money.
Yeah.
And like a lot of those places are like, they call you eat what you kill. Mm-hmm. Like you're only getting money if you win.
Yeah.
And same thing with like music. You're only getting money if you're winning.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you don't have streams, if you don't have followers, if you don't have merch, if you don't have tours, if you're not doing anything, you're not getting anything.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there's a security of like, well, if I sign with this record label, at least I can make my music. I know they're going to be giving me money to make music.
Yeah.
But it's not to live off of. It's just to produce the content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then how much more money will they give you if you're not winning? Like that has a limit. Again, you have to have to remember that they are a business.
Yes.
And so it's not a charity. They're not handing out money for free so that artists can live out their dream. It's not a gift.
Yeah.
And so it is not a crime for them to no longer give you money if you're not winning. It wouldn't make sense.
It's the wisest thing.
It is the wisest thing for them.
Yeah. Which I think that's also why they know now. So like record labels have gotten, they've continued to grow and evolve.
Mm-hmm.
They know that you can build your own fan base without them.
Yeah.
This wasn't a thing back in the day.
Right.
But now they know you can build your own fan base without them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not interested in you if you don't have a fan base.
Right.
Why? When I could grab someone who already is showing that they're profitable.
Yeah.
This is like early on Taylor Swift's career. One of the things she did, she collected a ton of emails.
Mm-hmm.
They started touring in her city. They started growing out. Her manager was really smart. She went to a record label already having 100,000 or 500,000 fans on an email list before she even got signed.
Right.
And she said, hey, I'm already making $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Imagine if we worked together.
Yes.
And like, that's what record labels want. They're not taking risks on people. They're not wanting to work with an artist that can't hit deadlines and can't do things. Like, it's a business.
Mm-hmm. And that was when it was even more difficult to like garnish your own fan base.
Yes. And she still was doing it.
And she was still doing it.
Yeah. And so now again, it's like, even if you start to flirt with this idea of like, ooh, I still would like to get to a record label, know that you're going to have to do it, be independent for a good season before that's even an option.
Yeah, for sure. David and I both read a book. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And it's a really interesting book. And it's around business leadership. And I love that the author says, he says something to the nature of, because he runs a restaurant, and he says something to the nature of, he was like, I will do whatever is best for you until it no longer benefits the restaurant.
Yep.
Right? Something is that about right?
Yeah.
And so record labels, rightfully, again, they should think the same way, where it's like, I'm going to do what's best for the artist until it's no longer what's best for the business.
Yeah.
And that's what a good business person does.
Yep.
So they're not evil for it. It is unfortunate that that's how that works out. Go ahead.
It could feel evil as the artist because what they deem best, you might not deem best. Right. And that's that control issue again. This is that when you're entering into a partnership, again, like I might think it's best for me to do this tour. My record label is like, that's not best for you right now.
Yeah.
To do this tour, we're going to do it in 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they have a right to try to protect their assets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is the disadvantage as an artist, is you do lose a lot of control over decisions like that.
Which,
might be
best because you might not be good at those decisions.
Yeah.
Like that's an advantage of being with the record label, is it is their job to make the best financial decisions.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily your job to make the best financial decision. And I think that's why we have this whole sell out to record labels idea.
Yeah.
Because at some point you start making music for the love of making music.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make the best financial decision. You want to make the best music decision.
Right. Yes.
And those don't always go side by side.
For sure. And at the same time, it may very well be that you are signed to a record label and they have no idea what they're talking. The record label has no idea what they're talking about.
Yep.
So that is the tension to manage, is like, who's right? Who actually knows what they're talking about? But oftentimes, yes, an artist's bend is going to be to think that they always know what they're talking about because it's their music.
Yeah.
And I get it.
And sometimes they might have a good intuition. Sometimes they don't.
Right.
Again, if they're building their fan base, hopefully they're learning their fan base and like what's a best for their fan base, how their fan base interacts with them the best.
I think I guess the way that, and again, I'm not signed to a record label, so I don't know. I only know what I've been told from my artist friends that are signed to record labels. I think I would trust your label, or even especially as you're considering being signed to one, trust the label insofar as they are in on what's currently happening and that they are keeping up with the technological advancements and the history of music as we've talked about it. If they're talking about the music industry as if it's existing in 2010, I'd be a little bit afraid and like a little bit skeptical. But for the ones that are forward thinkers and the ones that are actively engaging with like, hey, like, and I'm not talking about trends.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like what's hot right now. I'm talking about having the know-how to keep up with what's going to sustain through the industry and keep up. Those people are going to be the ones that I would listen to.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like anything, whether you're independent or you're trying to sign to a label, like you want to get to know the people you're working with.
Yeah.
You should know their philosophy on music and artistry and creativity. And, you know, same thing of like if you're working with a producer or mix engineer and you're independent and you're paying them, like you would want to know, like, what do they think makes a good mix?
For sure.
Because you might think it's very different than what they think. In that case, like you shouldn't be working with them.
Yeah.
It's just going to be difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so advantages, and all of these are just the inverse of what we just said, but we'll just touch on it real quick. As an independent artist, advantages and disadvantages. Advantages would be, obviously, you do get complete control. Obviously, you do get to keep all of the money that you make, technically.
Yeah, you can choose your team.
You can choose your team. You can have control of, like, the timeline. And then this is an interesting piece, direct to fans. Which is, I think, this is my hot take of this episode, David. We didn't talk about this before the show.
Yep.
I think this is the way that independent artists are going to like succeed moving forward. When you get directly to your fans and you get outside of what John Bellion would call the matrix, or what other people would call, like, you know, the monopolies of the world, like social media, honestly. And the things that kind of create roadblocks to your fans. And when you get direct access to them, or rather when your fans get direct access to you without any kind of blockage, that's what's going to help grow your fandom a lot more. I don't know if you disagree or agree with that.
Oh, no, totally agree.
I think if you're not doing that, you are missing out.
No, it's like, you know, you could be a fan of Will Smith as an actor, but now he starts putting little vlogs on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, it's just straight from him to you.
Yes.
You feel super connected. No, I 100% agree.
And so,
but that again goes back to who owns the fans.
Right.
A record label owns the fans if they have access to them.
Yeah.
You own the fans if you have access to them. Like, again, I've been learning a lot about Apple, so I'm like very excited.
Yes.
But like they're having the same thing when it came to audiobooks and publishers, because Apple was like, we want to sell the books to people, and the publisher's like, great, we want their emails and credit card information, so that when it comes time to renew, we could do sales pitches to them. And Apple's like, no, you don't get that. And they're like, what are you talking about? We don't get that. Like, there are subscribers.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, but they're using our platform.
Right.
So whose subscribers are they?
Yeah.
Who has access to them? That was
sure.
like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Who can sell more things to them and send them emails?
Yeah.
And Apple's like, it's going to be us. And they're like, no, it has to be us. So I think this is that same thing. As an independent, you have direct access to them.
Yeah.
If you think you can sell something or communicate something or have an event, you have it.
Yeah.
You have an email list.
Yeah. I think the difficult part is because we're still in the current era that we're in, it's not like you can, and maybe this will change someday. You still won't be able to access a large audience without using the monopolies of the world, like Instagram and YouTube. And
yeah, but even those, I would say that's still pretty direct.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I think because of the algorithms and because of the fact that
but like the people that are following you.
Yes, but there is still blockage. Like, they have to be on Instagram at the right time. And like, I'm not saying that I'm not one of those people that are like, the algorithm's working against you.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, even the very fact that like, if Instagram shut down, you lose your platform to them.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. I mean, emails is always going to be
the
most direct.
I think the fact that more artists are doing private forums, like I know John Bellion is my guy, but like, and again, but to my point, this is where I struggle, because I know John Bellion is very like get out of the matrix, and I love him for it, because I'm like, that's like he's tapping into something internal within me that's like, whoa, we should totally do that. And at the same time, it's like, but would you be able to do what you're doing today unless you were previously signed to a label where you were exposed to this larger audience?
That's what I'm saying. You can use things like Instagram and YouTube to funnel people
That's what I'm
to
saying.
deeper levels of like quicker connection between you. I agree.
I'm saying you won't have that deeper level, quicker connection unless you were first exposed to the larger audience that other people have control over first.
Yes.
Whereas like maybe again,
what I'm saying is like a YouTube and Instagram algorithm is still more in your control than the previous hand your music to a record label.
Absolutely.
Like you're one step further removed from your fans that way.
Yeah.
This is like a huge step forward.
Yes.
If that makes sense, to interacting with your fans.
Yeah. And I guess I'm saying that there is even still a big gap between like if it's like record label complete control, social media, big media, and then direct to fans.
Yeah.
I think that to me feels like an accurate scale.
Yeah. I feel like what's got to be the next thing is direct to fans through text message.
Maybe. People are doing that.
Yeah, I just still feel like most things are built around email addresses.
It is.
Like payment information and all that. I guess it's hard because you might change your number. But it feels like a lot of things are built around email, but I feel like the younger generation less and less interacts with email.
That's true.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, which is so interesting.
Well, I've seen I've been on text chains from artists where they do this bit where they're like, text me, I'll text you back.
Yeah.
But it's just their text list.
Yeah.
Of just sending out updates and
I'm just saying like,
deals.
You know, if I buy something from Sweetwater,
right,
and like they start sending me their promotional sales pitch, it's like a big part of a company's thing. Mm-hmm. But I don't check my email ever.
Yeah.
Isn't like the next thing to like get my number? Wouldn't that be like an even more direct?
I think you'll check your email for things that you care about. That's what I do. I'm subscribed to a bunch of things that I don't care about.
I'm just saying I feel like email is less and less opened these days.
No, I agree.
I think there's people that just never check their emails.
Yeah. I think artists are doing the text thing.
We do emails because of work.
Yes.
But I don't know. There's just a lot of people I talk to that they're like, oh, I never look at my email. I'm like, how do you never check your email?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, I might check it like once a month, maybe. I'm like,
that's wild.
Insane.
I mean, we're in the creative industry, which you would think requires less attention to email. And I'm like, I check my email every day.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do that.
Yeah.
What do people? It doesn't matter.
But I still communicate.
What are people doing that they don't check their email?
People more through text though.
That's true. Yes.
Even like work, like, yeah. It's just interesting.
So funny. It's so funny.
Times are changing, KMO.
Times are changing.
Okay. All that said, though, I do think like, what are some ways you could take advantage of being an independent artist?
Yeah,
that's what I think of.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yes, take advantage of having direct access.
Yes, for sure.
Take advantage of being able to try things.
Yeah,
without having to convince anybody else that it's like a great thing to try.
Yeah.
Take advantage of being able to work with whoever you want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's yours. So
for sure, I
think at the end of the day, like, you get to lay your head down at night knowing that like you're in charge.
Yep.
If you don't like the way your artistry is going, that's on you.
Yeah.
If you like the way it's going, keep going.
Yeah. Now, the catch-22 with that is because you are in charge. You are in charge. Like, you have to do the work.
You have to do it.
And if you are the kind of person that is driven and you feel like you can do things without somebody having to tell you to do it, then independent artistry may be for you, which will come down to the final question, like, which one should you do in a second? But while we're on this, I think it's just helpful to be aware of yourself. Like, what is your bend? Is your bend to be able to take initiative and try things without anyone telling you to do it? Or do you need somebody who is like a taskmaster and kind of helps give direction, which neither is worse or more noble than the other. But I think it's just good to be aware of what your tendency is. Yeah, dude. I think you kind of touched on this earlier, but because you touched on this with like, hey, there's some people that might be signing a record label who still can't eat, which is like wild. And maybe that's less true today because, again, people are more wary of record labels than they were 20 years ago. But let's take a second and bust the myth that if you've been signed to a record label, you have, quotes, made it.
Yeah. Because
that's not true. The reality is a lot of people get signed to record labels and they get shelved. Mm-hmm. And they are not being taken care of by the record labels, and the record label decided, oh, they're not as financially viable as we thought. And then the question is like, man, like, why did you sign me in the first place?
Or we'll break it down real easy. Record label gives you $15,000, make a record. You're so excited. You think you made it.
Yeah.
You spend that 15 grand making the record because
Yeah.
that's what it's for. You're not supposed to spend it on other things.
Mm-hmm.
Spend it on making your record. Well, guess what has to happen before that record label pays you any money from your music?
Recoupment.
Yeah. They need to recoup the costs.
Yeah.
And usually plus some.
Mm-hmm.
It's an investment.
Yes.
So they need to make back 15 grand plus a percentage before you even start to get any money from them.
Right.
Same thing with like some people get really excited back in the day when like their CD sales would go crazy.
Yeah.
They didn't realize that the record label had spent a ton of money on marketing.
Yeah.
And that the CD sales had to go recoup all the marketing costs of the CDs before you would see any of it.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, my CDs made $1 million. Like, yeah, we spent $750,000 on marketing. Plus we need to make something back.
Yeah. Yeah. It was wild.
And again, they have to make those business choices and they're
Yes.
not always going to run all that by you or ask you all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. And again, you have to be thoughtful with those decisions.
they're not paying you a salary to make music.
No. And people think of it that way. And
Yes.
it's just super not that way. And so I think just be careful of like being signed to a record label synonymous with making it.
Yeah, being good.
Or a verified artist. I think we have to define it differently. And that's kind of what we were hinting at earlier, where it's like you have to decide what matters most to you and what your goals are, because if what makes you an artist is tied to maybe your audience or how much money you're making, like that, you can hit that goal long before you get signed to a record label, or at some point after you get signed to a record label.
A consumer or a fan of your music could care less,
dude,
if you're signed to a label or not.
Yes,
they don't know.
Yeah, no,
unless they're like researching that.
Right.
But like, you could probably be listening to a lot of artists that are not signed.
Mm-hmm.
It does not change how you feel as a fan or a consumer.
Yes.
So why should it matter to you as an artist?
For sure. I know there were several artists that like I listened to before they were signed, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then they got signed, and I was like, well, I already thought that was awesome. So I'm just like, good for them, I guess. Like, cool. But not much has like changed for them.
I thought you were about to say things did change, like in a bad way. You know, like when like a show sometimes gets picked up by Netflix, and then you're like, oh man, it's all downhill from here.
Wait, no, I didn't. Picked up by Netflix? Like it was a show before?
Yeah.
No, I did not know that Netflix
this
did
happens
that.
sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's gone downhill?
It just completely changes, like, because they come in and they know their audience, and so they just change it. So a show that you love is like, oh man, that's got super different now all of a sudden.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you are not verified just because you've been signed by a label.
Yep. You don't get a little gold star next to your name on Spotify.
Yes. So if you do have goals to be signed by a label for whatever reason, whatever that may be, let's talk about, and we've hinted on this a little bit, talk about what labels might be looking for. Obviously, labels are looking for you if you've already built an audience.
Mm-hmm. Show that you're profitable on your own.
To know that you're profitable. And often they're looking for moments of virality.
Mm-hmm.
So and again, shallow as this might seem, it makes sense for a business to look at this and go, wow, do they have a capability of being viral and like shown to the world? Are people like latching onto them and something they have to offer as a person?
Yeah, they want to see that. They don't want to see nothing and assume that you could do that on your own.
Yes.
Just because you're talented.
That's not a good business decision.
That's a terrible business decision for them.
So let it be known and let it be so clear that a record label won't even consider you unless you have a consistent fan base already.
Mm-hmm.
No record label is going to, quote, save you and your music. No record label is going to think twice about helping you build your music and your fan base from the ground up.
Yeah.
That wouldn't make sense for them. Even if your music is really, really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know that people are latching on your music and that it's connecting with a fan base before they invest in it.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, wrapping this up, like when should you try to get signed or like make that change? I think that's a good question too, because you might be on the cusp of that or feel like you're at that level. I always think in general, you should always want to upgrade when you feel like you've squeezed all your potential out. So in my mind, if I'm independent and I'm doing pretty good, if I'm like, man, I still feel like there's more I could get out of being independent.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's not the right time for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think you should do that until you're like, man, I can't get any more. I can't grow anymore. I can't get any more fans. Like, I'm doing good, but like I've capped.
Yes.
That's where you look at an investment and you say, would this surge of financial and time and other people on my team resourcing, is this going to make that difference for the next level for me?
Yeah.
And if it's not the right time.
Yep.
If you're like, man, if they gave me 15 grand in a team of marketing, I don't see how we could do anything better.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give them anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
for sure.
That's when you want to upgrade, when that's your limiting factor.
For sure. And you can be confident, because it's not only about the record label, you can be confident that if you've already had this long trail of consistent success with fans, you can be confident that a record label is going to be eager to sign you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about like, man, like, is this going to work out? It's like, no, I can, you don't have to, it doesn't matter what you think. Like, I know it's going to work out.
Yeah. So, which, man, imagine if you enter negotiations that way.
Yes.
You have the power in the negotiating.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, if they say no, it's like their loss.
Yes.
That's the position you want to be in.
Yeah.
In any business transaction.
In any business transaction. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the power move, I guess, what people would call it. And then when would it be a good time to remain independent is when you have more growing to do as an artist and you feel like you can still grow and do more things without the need for a record label. And it's also when you have all the tools you need to do what your current goals are, I think.
Or you don't like the deals that they're talking about.
Yep. Simply put. So I hope we've been like very unbiased, because I am. Like, again, I think I do genuinely think that record labels are like starting to get it, because there was a whole point maybe like 5 to 10 years ago where like record labels were not getting it. Like they were like not catching up. And now especially a lot of like independent record labels are like, hey, like this independent artist has spent much of their career with complete creative control. It's like, how do I continue to give them creative control while making this a good business investment for us? It's like, that's what record labels need to be thinking about. And they're starting to get it. And at the same time, I'm like, I know independent artists are also crushing it. And so there is no right or wrong to this. Go ahead.
KMO. Also, though, like taking a step back, you could be not biased about this and be like totally for independent artists. Mm-hmm. But if like a label approached you tomorrow and was like, hey, we want to give you $20K to make your next record. I know, that's what I'm saying. As soon as a large sum of money comes your way, you're just like, ooh.
Yes.
Which is so tricky. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how you better talk to a lot of people around you. A lot
of people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's an interesting question. Like, I don't know if we had to throw out a percentage of like how much of the rights to my music I'd be willing to give up. I'm like, I have no idea how I'd answer that. Yeah. Would I be willing to give up like 30, 40, 50%, 60% if it was like a big enough number?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How much creative control are you willing to give up? Yeah.
You know, like if they said something, this wouldn't happen, but like if they said something wild, like we don't want you to produce your own music anymore. We want to give it to other producers. I'm like, man, like, but like they offered me all the money and like they gave me most of the rights. Like I have no idea whether or not I would say yes to that, because I really care about the production side of my music. Yeah. There's a lot to consider in it. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And it could be really bad for you.
It could.
Yeah.
It could. So.
Could be good for you.
Yeah. These are the risks you have to take. Again, it's helpful for people to think of it as a business, which.
But the majority of our listeners are independent artists.
Yeah.
And the majority of our listeners are not having record labels knocking down their door to give them money. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, for the majority of our listeners, feel confident that this is a good time to be an independent artist.
Yes.
Have hope that there's a lot that you can do and you can grow, and you should work to get yourself to a point where you get to make the decision.
Yes.
Whether you're going to be signed or not, but it's your decision. Mm-hmm. It's not determined because some record label randomly heard about you and by chance comes and talks to you.
Yes.
I think that's what I would want our listeners to most know is you do the work to get there.
Right.
And then you can decide.
Yes.
If you don't do the work, you'll never get to decide. Mm-hmm. So.
Yes. So
you only have one choice if you don't do the work. You're independent.
Yeah. The approach and the application for much of our audience is the same.
Yes.
Whether you want to be signed to a record label or independent, you still have to put in the work to garnish an audience and a fan base that would even get the attention of a label and or allow you to do the things independently that you want to do in the future. So that's our takeaway. Work hard, do the things, be wise, Try to approach direct to fan, however that would benefit you most, and treat it like a business. And I'll just say this last thing too. Like, we've been throwing out a lot of business talk, and I know that much of, at least what I've talked about in past podcasts, are like very much like, don't like commodify your music.
Yep.
And I there is a balance to be had where it's like, hey, make your music however you want to make your music, and then after the music is made, put on your business hat. I don't think that, so like, I don't want people to think like I'm going back on what I've said. Like, still make what you want to make in a way that's like edifying to your soul and like good for you to make. And then I think you got to learn how to compartmentalize these topics, if that makes sense. You may agree or disagree, but that's,
well, I was
where
just
my
going
heart
to
is.
say, I think, you got to make your music, but at the same time, you have to have enough business sense to continue to make your music.
Yeah.
If you're not going to do a good job on the business side, you're going to limit
Yes.
the music you can make.
Yes. They work hand in hand with
They
one
work
another.
hand in hand. They're not against each other.
Yes. And we've talked about this off camera a lot recently. This could be on a whole podcast. Like, people don't realize how much their lack of executive skills actually stifle their creativity.
Yeah.
The music industry doesn't need more creativity. It needs more people of integrity and people that are going to do what they say they're going to do and actually follow through.
Yep.
Not just like la-di-da-di-da, I'm creative. It's like, no, you have to know how to like plan, follow a plan, and execute that plan.
Yep. I know lots of people that are very well known for how talented they are. They've been on shows like The Voice and American Idol.
Yeah.
And they've never been able to do anything with their talent.
And it's tragic.
It is tragic. And so that's where it's like, you need to be good enough at the industry, business, like entrepreneur, independent side, so that people can hear your music.
For sure.
That it can be delivered and distributed to your fans in an effective and sustainable way.
Yeah. Yeah. All of this is possible. We hope that this was more encouraging than discouraging, but work hard, put your head down, continue to make music, and in due time, the right opportunities will come. The right connections will come. See y'all around.